Dr. Bharati, for having me as a part of your course. I'll be talking about toric ICLs in the management of keratoconus. Now, toric ICLs in keratoconus is actually an off-label use, but so the limited experience that some of us have with it shows that it can be very useful. There's no financial interest that I have. Visual rehabilitation is an important part of keratoconus management. Traditionally, as we know, spectacles have been used for early keratoconus, and the mainstay of therapy has been RGP lenses. But the quest for spectacle or contact lens independence continues, and why not in keratoconus patients? They should also be independent of glasses and contact lenses if possible. So surgical treatments have come in to enhance the quality of vision and also the quality of life. Phakic IOLs are a relatively newer but exciting modality for keratoconus patients. They are recommended when cornea is stabilized, either naturally, the progression has stopped, or post C3R. And keratoconus patients usually have myopic astigmatism, therefore they often require a toric phakic IOL. There is a paucity of literature regarding toric ICL usage after keratoconus, especially after C3R. The last review that I did was some time back, but I found about 10 studies in Medline. 5 of them were case series and 5 were either case reports or very small series. So toric ICL, or implantable columnar lens as the full form is essentially a posterior chamber phakic IOL manufactured by Star Surgical in Switzerland. It has a Anyway, so you can see the center here is the optic along with the haptic and the end plates. The optic is the thinnest part, which is about 50 microns and is very delicate and should not be handled with instruments. So let's look at toric ICL versus RGP lenses. Please remember, visual acuity post-toric ICL implantation may not be as good as with a well-fitted RGP contact lens in keratoconus patients. I'm talking of keratoconus patients. A well-fitted contact lenses, RGP lens, can give you better vision than toric ICL. It is important to highlight this fact to the prospective ICL patient, because otherwise they may be in for an unfortunate surprise. The reason is because the keratoconus has irregular astigmatism, and the RGP lens forms a tear lens, and this factor is absent in toric ICL. What happens with the tear lens is that the RGP lens creates a smooth, even surface to see through, and therefore a lens system is formed. The RGP anteriorly, the patient's cornea posteriorly, and the tear film in between. And by modulating the power and shape of the lens, we can help the patient see better. But this fact will not be available with toric ICL. I would like to repeat this because I know of some friends and colleagues who probably went highlighted, and the patient was not very happy with the result because they feel that they were seeing better with RGPs. The indications keratoconus are correction of moderate to high myopia with astigmatism, and the ranges, these are the ranges available, although hyperopic is what we don't need. Now it's available in toric ICL, but it's not required for keratoconus. It's required in mixed astigmatism, it works. And this refraction should be stable, and anterior chamber depth should be more than 2.8 millimeters internal, that is from the endothelium. So let's look at the preoperative planning. These are the series of things that we have to look at, like accurate and stable refraction, AC depth. I'll cover each of these. White to white, which is very critical. Pachymetry, keratometry, specular microscopy, back vertex distance, and selecting the ICL software. So in preoperative planning, the very most important thing that I would say is horizontal white to white, because if the white to white is not accurate, the lens may be either too big, where it will cause glaucoma, it will cause shalling of the AC, or it may be smaller in size, and therefore it will keep rotating, and the axis will change, and the patient will end up with a poorer result. It is best measured with a digital caliper, with the patient lying supine under a microscope. I would not recommend a slit lamp evaluation. It's best done under a microscope with the patient and the surgeon both being very comfortable. It can be validated by OpScan using the iMatrix tool, which is what I use. And the recent Pentacam version also gives you a white to white, although I have no experience with that one. The anterior chamber depth should be a minimum of 2.8 millimeters from the endothelium inwards. Please remember, because we are all used to doing phacoemulsification, and in phaco we have a potential depth of 8 millimeters at certain points of time, whereas in ICL we just have about 2.83 millimeters, 3.2 millimeters, on an average of 3 millimeters. So the space is much less. Plus in phaco we are removing, even if the lens gets damaged, we are not worried if we are doing while entering the chamber or whatever. But in toric ICL we cannot allow the crystalline lens to get damaged. This is the calculation software. This is how the company sends the report. Peripheral iridotomy has been an important part of ICL planning. The reason being that because sometimes the lens can block the passage and we can end up with a very high intraocular pressure. Therefore, and it is usually preferably done 2 weeks prior to the surgery by YAG PI, but can also be done intraoperatively by a vitrector. However, the newer version, the Visian ICL V4C, has a 360 micron port in the center of the optic and does not require, this lens does not require a PI, and the experience that I've had with about 8 lenses, it seems to be working very well. The peripheral iridotomy, because the older version is still available, and in case you want to go for that, although there is no price benefit, the PI must be large and patent, should be mid-peripheral, and inadequate PIs can cause post-op complications like rise of intraocular pressure. Marking the horizontal axis is very important. There are various techniques described, there are various markers. If you're used to toric IOLs, you have a set where you can mark it, you can use that. But after all these, what I've realized works best is using the horizontal slit on the slit lamp and making the mark. It is important to bisect the cornea into 2 halves, because if the horizontal mark is a little higher and that becomes the reference mark and you mark the axis, you'll end up getting a wrong axis also. So this is on the table where you can mark with the reference mark, you know where the horizontal axis was. You keep that at 90 degrees or 0 degrees and then you mark accordingly the axis at which you want to go. What the lens to stay. Toric ICL has positioning marks. The older version had these diamond-shaped marks. Now the newer version has 2 lines along the axis which help in orientation. A few words about the surgical technique. The ICL orientation is marked on the cornea. 1 or 2 paracenteses are made. I personally started with 2, but now I make just 1 paracentesis. Viscoelastic is injected. A temporal clear corneal incision is made. It's always a temporal clear corneal incision. The injection of ICL is injected inside and followed by injection of viscoelastic on top of the ICL so as to flatten it a little. Then the ICL is positioned behind the iris. The end plates, as you saw, they are positioned behind the iris. Irrigation and aspiration of viscoelastic is done. Constriction of pupil may or may not be done. I don't do it anymore. And 2 to 4 hours check has been advocated earlier, but now once we know that visco has been evacuated, especially the newer version which has a port, the evacuation is much better. We really don't need to do this. Basically, in the surgical technique, we have to remember that it's essentially a series of steps we're already familiar with, like the incision and all those things. When you're doing phacoemulsion, it's just a proper execution of each step. And we have to remember, as I mentioned earlier, that we are removing the crystalline lens, but in this case, in phaco, but in this case, in ICL, we are trying to preserve it. And on top of it, we are implanting a ICL. The central zone of the lens is the no touch zone, so be careful with the instrumentation. I think we can skip the video in the interest of time. Because you'll see ICL videos all over the place. Post-op medication is follow your normal cataract routine. Topical antibiotics 4 to 6 times per day for 1 week, and topical steroids 4 to 6 times per day and tapered over the next 4 weeks. Now, a few words about the Volt. See this in a slit, this is what it would look like. This is a crystalline lens, and this is the ICL, and this is the potential space. This is the space between the two, and this is known as the Volt. This volting is very important. On the first post-op day, you should see that. The earlier version, which was the normal saline, after hydration, tend to increase in size, and the volt would increase over a period of 1 week. The newer version comes in DSS, it's fully hydrated, and therefore we would expect the volt on day 1 to persist. So there is a corneal thickness reference, assuming that the corneal thickness is about 500 microns. If it's 0.5 times the corneal thickness, that is half the corneal thickness, it is a low volt and at risk for cataract formation. If it's half to 1.5 times the corneal thickness, it is the ideal volt. And if it's more than 1.5 times, then it's a shallow AC and there's a risk of glaucoma. So in this case, you can see it's about, the volt is here, it's about half the corneal thickness, it's about half the corneal thickness, and 20 microns, which is just about adequate. I've done about I've been very careful about these patients. I don't do it I do it after a reasonably long follow-up of at least 2 years post C3R. And I've done about 15 eyes of 10 patients, but the data that I'm talking about is I could analyze only 7 eyes of 5 patients till now. The rest is yet to be analyzed. All eyes underwent C3R followed by toric ICL implantation, and the average duration between the 2 procedures was 26 months. And this is something I would highly recommend, that you delay the interval as much as you can. All patients had, because the reason is even after 6, I think Rishi will agree, we have patients 6.5 years down, C3R 6 years, and there's some change in the cornea still happening, flattening. Although after 1.5 to 2 years, my personal observation is that the rate of change decreases significantly. Therefore, the cutoff that I've kept for myself is about 2 years post ICL, 1.5 2 years post ICL, post CCL, sorry. Average duration, so all patients had improvement in the uncorrected and the best corrected visual acuity. The mean improvement, there was a mean improvement of 5 lines of UC uncorrected visual acuity, and 2 lines in the best spherical corrected visual acuity. Now, none of the patients lost any line of best spherical corrected visual acuity. If you look at, I just highlight the things here. The uncorrected visual acuity improved from, the average improved from 6/60 to 6/12 partial. The best obvious corrected visual acuity improved from 6/12 to 6/7.5. The refractive astigmatism, basically on refraction, improved from 4.5 to 1.25, reduced rather. However, the corneal astigmatism did not change much, and which is expected because we are not working on the cornea, we implanted toric ICL. The spherical improvement reduced from minus 9.25 on average to minus 0.75. So, as I said, mentioned, there are not much reported literature, but whatever the results we see, they are similar to ours. Some practical tips to ensure stability. We have to ensure the stability of refraction, and therefore the cutoff, there's no definite cutoff. It's for you to decide. Mine is 1.5 to 2 years. It should be done in mild to moderate keratoconus, not in very advanced keratoconus. The bow tie patterns with minimal skewing are ideal. We should avoid significantly shifted cones. Personally, as a tip, I can offer it. I proceed only if the auto refractometer picks up the refraction. Because if we do a cyclophysic refraction, if we do a retinoscopic refraction, we can get a refraction very often. But auto-ref is less sensitive and will not be able to pick up if the cornea is distorted a little more than what. And if it is not picking up, I will not proceed. Subjective refraction, now very important, takes precedence over objective refraction. Many of you who are dealing with keratoconus would know that the manifest or the subjective refraction can be different from what the auto-ref picks up or even what the retinoscopy shows you. But go with when you're planning the ICL, toric ICL, go with the subjective refraction.
Session, no other session.